Awesome. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney. I am the education programmer here with BCMPHA. I've seen some familiar faces in the room, which is always really nice. I would like to acknowledge that BCMPH offices are located on the unceded traditional Coast Salish territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam peoples, but our work takes place throughout the ancestral townlands of over 199 distinct First Nations in BC. Acknowledge you that each of you are coming into this Zoom meeting in a different place. So we welcome you to say hi in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from, what organization you're with, and just say hi to the people in the room. Would also like to welcome our lovely presenters this morning. You'll be hearing from, oh, I lost you guys. We'll be hearing from Suzanne and Lindsay as they lead through the session. If you haven't been in Zoom in a while, there is a chat box. It looks like a speech bubble at the bottom of your screen. You're welcome to click it. The presenters ask that if you have questions while they're presenting, to just type it in the chat and they'll get to it at the end. And then there'll be like a Q&A session at the end as well that you're welcome to ask questions either in the chat or by unmuting yourself, raising your hand, and asking in a conversation way. So I will pass it over to our presenters this morning and hope you all enjoy your time together. Thanks, folks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Faiza, and I am the Knowledge Lead at Tapestry Community Capital. I'm just going to share my screen here for a minute. There we are. And let's put this into... Okay, so I'm the Knowledge Lead at Tapestry Community Capital, and what this really means is that I work on building awareness for community bonds through education and policy and advocacy. So today I'll be here to talk to you and introduce you to community financing, our work at Tapestry, and community bonds. So let's just jump straight into it. So Tapestry is a nonprofit cooperative, and our real mission is to make community investment accessible and a viable option for retail investors, institutional investors, and more importantly, community organizations across Canada. We help guide organizations through every step of the way from planning and feasibility to administering community bonds, which is the tool that we specifically work with. And over the last quite a few years, we have raised and managed over 100 million in investment, and we have worked with 4,500 plus community investors. But we are here today to talk about financing for affordable housing, and there is, as I'm sure you all know, a dire need for affordable and supportive housing across Canada. It is a crisis. But we've also spoken to affordable housing providers, and many of them face financing challenges, and there's a need for patient, flexible capital that is also deployable as an organization needs it. Funds and grants, of course, don't necessarily always cut it, and there are many barriers to securing mortgages from traditional lenders. And of course, these challenges have continued to be amplified through this new era of interest rate hikes, capital tightening with inflation, and increased competition for a reduced number of grants. But of course, financing challenges aren't the only hurdles to development or even acquisition of affordable housing. Despite widespread acknowledgement that housing affordability is a crisis, we see resistance across the board. And opposition, of course, helps delay and increase financing risks. So we are no strangers to this. Tapestry got a start in renewable energy development for wind turbines. And what we found is that generally people oppose development because they did not have a stake in the benefits. They felt like they had no control, and there was no active voice opposing the resistance that was being presented. And so we have an answer to some of these challenges presented, and that answer is a social finance tool called community bonds. But very simply, let's first answer, what is a community bond? So community bonds, very simply put, are a loan from local/values aligned folks to a community organization. So like a traditional bond, the bond has a fixed term, a fixed interest rate, and is repaid at maturity, or you can structure how you want, but we'll get to that. But the key difference here is that community bonds value returns holistically, where social, cultural, and environmental returns are valued just as much as financial returns. And through this method, organizations that issue community bonds can actually set more equitable and accessible financing terms that fully recognize the value of what they're trying to do. Because that is the business case for why a community bond can ask for a 3% interest rate in certain climates. And so through this kind of community bond investment, what we find is that investors have a stake in the benefits that are taking place. And of course, community bonds are not a silver bullet. We find that they are often interfaced with other financing mechanisms, but they often catalyze the securing other types of mortgages or funds or grants. Bonds are, of course, issued in the name of the organization. And at Tapestry, what we do is that we work as a consultant to provide support. Bonds can, in some cases, also be added to RRSP TFSA accounts, but you need to work with very specific brokers. But why community bonds? And I think like this is a really critical piece, is like, why choose this kind of financial tool? So as hinted previously, community bonds allow organizations to set their own terms. So you set the interest rate, you set the value of the bond series, the repayment terms, when when the bond matures, etc. And they can be designed to meet project milestones and cash flow needs. They're also quite inclusive. Bonds can be priced as low as $500 to allow widespread community participation. And I think going back to the point about opposition to development, they are engaging. When someone invests in a community bond, we see them become a cheerleader. They're proud of their investments and they become powerful ambassadors. They are also efficient in terms of time. They take about 1/3 of the time of a traditional donation campaign. We have organizations who raise capital between 4 to 6 months. They're also in demand. So every campaign that Tapestry has run so far has been oversubscribed, meaning that the issuer has hit the limit or has had to either close the investment offering or has had to return funds just because they are, well, as I said, oversubscribed. They're also scalable. With many investors, they choose to reinvest, and there's a huge opportunity to build a pipeline of future projects and continue to invest, to continue to engage in your new investor base, and also with a new community of support that actually gets developed around these projects. So let's take a look at an example of a project that has used community bonds and has used it for affordable housing specifically. So this is the Mount, which is located in Peterborough, Ontario, and it's the Mount Community Centre. It's a historic 130,000 square feet building in downtown Peterborough. And this project was led by the Peterborough Poverty Reduction Network, who wanted to do something impactful within their community. So they began to look for surplus buildings that could be retrofitted, and they found the former home of the Sisters of St. Joseph. Yes, Sisters of St. Joseph, and it was a community asset that was on sale. So they raised $2 million from 67 investors, and they developed this property into a mix of affordable housing, supportive housing, co-working spaces, and there was also a community food center added to the project. But of course, as one can imagine, $2 million was not the full project cost. It was just about 1/3 of the full $6.4 million, which was filled in through a low interest loan from the county, grants and donations, and then also a $1 million grant from the city of Peterborough. What is critical about this capital stack, though, is the catalytic nature of the community bonds. The community bonds actually helped unlock some of the other capital that has been listed here. So the campaign stimulated both both public and political interest, which facilitated the low interest loan and city grant in particular. So here we see how private retail investment stimulated public investment, when oftentimes the model is often considered the other way around, where public investment stimulates private investment. So the Mount, of course, has not been the only project to use community bonds for affordable housing. Last year, the Union Cooperative out in Kitchener-Waterloo has also used community bonds in tandem with preferred shares to raise capital for their property acquisition. They also had both retail investors and also institutional investors through 12 foundations. Community bonds are not just restricted to Ontario, but they are also found in other provinces, Quebec being a really good example. So Brick par Brick, which is this organization based out of Montreal, raised $364,000 from 40 community investors to partially finance and purchase and remodel a 31-unit building and community center. So I've kind of touched on, like, there's this thing about community bonds where it values multiple types. It has a triple bottom line, it values returns holistically. So who would want to invest in such a thing? So what we found is that folks who invest generally tend to be, folks interested in having impactful investments or local to the organization or maybe cause connected. But some folks also invest because they're return focused. Community bonds, because they're outside of the traditional stock market, are oftentimes quite a lot more stable than traditional investments. Investors also tend to be between their early 30s to 70s, and bonds tend to have a 70% reinvestment rate. And I think it's important to also touch upon, how much do folks invest? So the average community bond investment tends, from retail investors anyway, tends to start at like $13K, although it can be as low as $500, as mentioned previously. And then institutional investors often come in generally at $115,000. Our current breakdown is that there is more retail investment than necessarily institutional investors, but this is actually starting to change. There is a new movement within institutions and foundations to actually do impact investing, and many are interested in community bonds as part of their impact investing target portfolios. So community bonds are a pretty cool tool, in our opinion, and Tapestry, via the CMHC's Housing Supply Challenge, has been given the opportunity to scale the use of community bonds across Canada. And so these are, through our Investing in Housing program, some of the amazing organizations we work with, and one of them is right in your provincial backyard. So Propolis Housing Cooperative is located in Kamloops, BC, and is currently raising community bonds as we speak. So this is an organization from BC that has a BC-related experience of issuing. So it is my great pleasure to hand this presentation off now to the lovely Lindsay Harris, who's the president of Propolis Housing Cooperative, to talk about their experience with raising community bonds. Thank you so much. And I know that was a lot of information, and we will be happy to answer questions after. Thanks so much. Lindsay, off to you.
Thanks so much, Suzanne, for that great introduction. And I'm so delighted to be here and have the opportunity to share our story with this group. I would like to start off by acknowledging that Propolis is located on the unceded territory of the Secwepemc peoples. We're based here in Kamloops, and we really take very seriously our responsibility to live as good guests on this land, and so really all of the work that we're doing as an organization to build cooperative housing that is affordable and resilient is all part of that process. So I'm delighted to tell you a little bit about our story and how we're using community bonds. And the short summary version is that right now Propolis is in the process of raising $1.1 million in community bonds. We're planning to build the first ever net zero affordable housing development that will have 50 affordable units and commercial space for Kamloops. At this point in our campaign, we have raised over $300,000 towards our target, and that's our investments collected to date. We also have pledges that are over $250,000. So we've just between our pledges and investments have just nudged over the halfway point of our campaign. Let me tell you a little bit about where the inspiration for Propolis comes from. For those of you who are familiar with beehives, you might know that propolis is the resinous substance that bees use to fill the gaps in their hive. And our team at Propolis is so inspired by this metaphor. We are really inspired by a desire to build a community where nobody falls through the cracks, and where everyone has access to the homes that they need. And we're also really inspired to build homes that are really resilient and provide stable homes for people, just like propolis is that really like protective substance that that bees use. So the story of our organization, in brief, we've been working towards this our first project for the last 3 years. So we're a brand new nonprofit housing cooperative organization. Our mandate is to build affordable, sustainable net zero homes. We're working on our first project, but ultimately our goal is over the next 2-3 decades to be managing a network of multifamily buildings in Kamloops and to keep growing over time. At this point in time, though, we're very small, we're very scrappy, and we're a grassroots group that's fully volunteer-led. So you can see a few members of our team in this photo. Myself and Miles Pruden make up our sort of lead development team at this very early stage for the project. Miles is the owner of Next Build Construction, which is a very small but widely regarded construction firm that's based here in Kamloops. Miles has innovated so much with net zero building strategies that are also deeply affordable. And then, of course, myself, I have a background in community economic development. Most of my work in Kamloops so far has been in the food system, working on food security. But after so many years of doing that work, have really come to realize the ways that food insecurity and affordable housing are so interconnected. And so, really wanting to build that grassroots support for affordable housing development. So like so many of our communities these days, Kamloops is experiencing a very significant housing crisis and a significant housing affordability gap. And so, we're seeing in our community the way that this creates a polarization, deepens the inequality in the community. Kamloops has a lot of really fabulous organizations that provide subsidized or supportive housing options, but all of that housing is so backlogged. The wait lists are so long because the jump to get into market housing, once someone's in supportive housing, they get back on their feet, they're ready to move on. They just can't because market housing costs are so expensive. So we're really looking at this situation and trying to think about how our organization can come and fill the niche in that middle point of the housing continuum. So the target for our housing units is that we would like to price all of the housing units in our building at 80% of the median market rents, which in Kamloops numbers comes out to about 55% of what someone would be paying if they were looking for an apartment on the current market. So we're really trying to aim for a significant level of affordability across the whole building. So let me tell you a little bit more details about the project itself. We have a property that we are working on acquiring at the corner of Aspen Street and Trunk Hill Road in Kamloops in the heart of the North Shore. And we are hoping to build a 6-story apartment building here that will have 50 affordable residential units that will range from bachelor size up to 3-bedroom size. All of the residential units will be net zero and incorporate universal design. Some of the net zero features that the building will include will be thermal mass, nighttime purge cooling, and solar heat collection, heat pumps, and drain water heat recovery. Although if Miles were here, he would tell you on the technical side, he's always innovating. And as we get closer to the actual design phase for the building, that list of strategies will get refined and added to. Who is this building for? Cooperative housing is such a great tool for ensuring affordability for such a diverse range of people. So families, working professionals, retirees, students, really, we want to think of cooperative housing as housing for everyone, because we know that mixed and diverse communities are strong communities, and so we want this to be a place that everyone can feel welcomed. Most of the people in this room will be familiar with the co-op housing model, but nonprofit co-op housing is owned and operated democratically by its members. Members purchase a moderately priced share. For Propolis right now, this is set at $2,000. They pay a monthly housing fee and enjoy secure long-term tenancy in the building. A couple of the fabulous successes that NextBuild has had so far, that as they've been piloting the net zero building strategies, include this fourplex in Kamloops, which is it's the best performing multifamily building in the community, and this building was completed in 2018. And then NextBuild Construction's most recent building is this net zero daycare facility. It was just completed last year, and the going rate for constructing a childcare space in the province right now is $40,000, or it was at the time that this building was completed. And NextBuild was able to complete this building for $27,000 per childcare space. So it's substantially cheaper than conventional construction costs, but it also has the benefit of being net zero, which means its operational costs are going to be much lower over the building's lifetime. And it's energy independent, has a battery backup. So if the power goes out in the community, this building can stay powered independently. So let me tell you a little bit about our connection to community bonds. So like I mentioned at the beginning, our target is to raise $1.1 million to purchase the Trunk Hill Road property for our first project. So we are calling our bonds Propolis bonds. Like Suzanne mentioned, community bonds are a proven social finance tool. It's an interest-bearing loan that Propolis is issuing to support the purchase of our property. We have individuals, businesses, and foundations are eligible to purchase Propolis bonds. And then, because we are hoping to be able to move on to additional building projects in the future, we hope that once the term for our first community bond is up, that those investors will want to reinvest in a new project with Propolis. So for the entire financing package or capital stack for this project, we're starting off with community bonds for our property acquisition, and then we do intend to secure full financing for the project from a diverse range of sources, including CMHC programs and other lenders. And we've done quite a bit of financial modeling. We have a 10-year financial model that looks at the revenue that we'll receive from the 50 residential units and the commercial tenants in the building. So this is what our bond terms look like. We have the Worker B series, which someone can invest in as low as $1,000. For that series, they'll receive 2.5% interest over a 3-year term. That interest is paid at maturity, so at the end of the 3-year term. We have a Queen Bee series that someone can invest in at a minimum of $5,000. 3% interest for that series, also a 3-year term, but with the Queen series, we'll be paying the interest annually. So at the end of each year of the 3-year term, someone will receive an interest payment from Propolis. And then finally, our apiary series starts at a $10,000 investment. You can receive 3.5% interest over a 3-year term with the interest paid at maturity. So why choose community bonds? Suzanne gave such a great overview of this already, but I really want to like reflect it back from our experience about why we specifically chose community bonds as a team. And I really want to emphasize how flexible, nimble, and empowering it is to go with this financing strategy. Folks in the room who are involved in affordable housing operations or development will know that affordable housing development benefits from a diverse financing package. And I guess that's my sort of polite way of saying that, the way that we finance affordable housing development is ridiculously complex. The way that you have to source a capital stack from such diverse sources and from so many partners, and all of those partners have different requirements and different timelines and long lead times for approval. Being able to add in a tool like community bonds into that mix was so important and so empowering for us as a group. One of the key benefits of community bonds is that Propolis was able to set the terms that worked for us. So community bonds can have flexible terms that allow us to structure the offering to match what the project needed and to match our ability to repay the funds. And then again, community bonds reduce our dependence on funder timelines and restrictions. So especially getting started in this work as a new organization or even an existing organization that hasn't operated affordable housing before, being able to show up to the table to government bodies or funders or lenders to say, wow, we've been able to secure our property purchase. We have so much support from our community to raise the capital for that. We're really excited about the ways that, even this early on in our campaign, the way that our community bond project is starting to open some doors for us that would have otherwise stayed closed. And then I also want to emphasize how much community bonds are values aligned with our purpose as an organization, especially as a cooperative and a grassroots volunteer-led cooperative. We really want this project to be owned by our community and to be able to grow a strong base of support across folks in Kamloops who want to support it. So community bonds are a great way to keep investment dollars in the community. As we're talking to prospective investors, one of the things that people get really excited about is the chance to actually see the tangible difference that their investment dollars are making in their community. There is a growing network of social impact investors that are looking for these type of investments. And we're able to keep the bond investments really inclusive. So, one of the kind of principles that we took when we were structuring our bond terms was like, let's keep that investment minimum at a really low threshold, because if someone's in a position to invest even a little bit of money, we want them to feel like they can belong to this movement, that they can be a part of making a tangible difference in the community. So here's a little bit about what our project timeline looks like. We're working on property acquisition right now. We'll be working on pre-development and design. Essentially, as soon as we can acquire the property and move forward with that pre-development, we will. Our target will be to start construction in the summer of 2024. Although we know that's a really ambitious timeline, it may need to be pushed back. one of the benefits of the property that we're acquiring is that it does have existing commercial tenants. So once we purchase the property, it is financially sustainable for us to hold it. And so if we need to adapt the timeline and push it forward, we can do that and have the flexibility to do that. Our goal would be to have occupants moving into the building in 2026. So that's it from me. I'll stop sharing, and then I guess we can move into questions and